Hi, I'm Tiffany Green-Williams, Team Rayceen co-host and moderator.
And I'm Carol Mitchell, Team Rayceen Productions co-host and moderator.
Joining us is Ya Minko. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ya Minko. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to talk to you.
Thanks for joining us. So before we talk about your new EP, please tell the viewers a little about your background and who you are.
So I'm a recording artist. I'm a songwriter. I'm an audio engineer. And I also consider myself a compassion advocate, which connects directly to the advocacy work that I want to do in the field of mental health. I moved to the United States in 2012, so I've been here for about 12 years now. I grew up international. I'm originally from Libreville, Gabon, and I've lived there, Nigeria, France, and traveled a bunch with my parents growing up, which ended up shaping my worldview and the way I show up in the world. And yeah, that's that.
Very nice. Well, please tell us about your new EP, Executive Dysfunction at the Function, including what inspired the music, and the meaning of the title.
For sure. So executive dysfunction at the function is directly connected to my personal relationship with my mental health. Uh, I'm an ADHD kid or adult, I guess now, with depression and anxiety that comes with it. And one of the manifestations of ADHD, or at least what ADHD is in major part, is the failing of the executive functions. So I move through life with executive dysfunction on a regular basis. However, that's not always something that's going to show. It's not a thing that makes sense to folks unless I speak on it. And I'm of the opinion that as an artist, as an entertainer, as someone who wants to have a platform and be heard, it is my responsibility to be authentic about my experiences for, for the chance that it helps, another person. So the title of the project, Executive Dysfunction at the Function, is saying I'm out of the house. I'm making decisions. I'm doing what I can to get where I'm trying to go as a person. But behind, that drive to function and to be exactly who I want to be, there is still a brain that is fighting itself and that is having to overcome its sometimes self-destructive instincts with everything it does. Yet I'm at the function. So it's an invitation to, have a certain level of curiosity for the ways in which these things manifest, because it's not always, obvious. And also like uh kind of a message of togetherness for folks who might feel the same way and who might function the same way, or having a much harder time than they would be known, getting through every day because of their relationship with their brain and how they overcome that.
That's really interesting that, and bringing visibility to those sort of struggles is so important. You mentioned in the beginning in your introduction that you have traveled the world, you've lived in several places. How is your music influenced by your international experiences?
So because I grew up in a country that functioned on import more than it did on import more than it did on exporting or local consumption for a number of reasons, I've always had a relationship with the world that was such that culturally, when it comes to the food, to the music, to the entertainment, and everything that comes with that, I had a high exposure to everything that was happening outside of where I am. So I grew up listening to hip hop, despite the fact that next to me, the closest musical thing was probably like Congolese rumba or Gabonese folkloric pop. And traveling and going all these different places with my parents kind of opened me to newness and difference in a way such that it doesn't feel other. I think my process naturally welcomes outside influences and tries to find a way to incorporate them in what I do without necessarily bastardizing the purity of their origin. So when it comes to my music, I end up being able to tap into elements of Afro pop, but also tap into elements of hip hop, which is where I started, because I started with rap and spoken word. At the same time, I write a lot of things that are going in the direction of, indie alternative and pop alternative. So I think, to make a long answer short, it kind of makes flexibility and cultural curiosity and experimentation something that's at the core of everything I do musically and artistically naturally, because I was raised, looking at the world from home and then at home from the rest of the world.
Very nice. So what sort of music is on the EP? Which one of these influences did you draw the heaviest from, or what's the vibe you were going for?
It's very much a combination. I would say the most cohesive thing about the EP is the emotion and the ways that it connects to the way I was processing life through my songwriting. If I was to name genres, it's at the intersection of Afro Alte, hip hop, and alternative hip hop that veers towards neo soul.
Very nice. Thank you.
Mhm.
Backtracking just a little bit, you spoke about why you're such an advocate for mental health, and you shared a little bit about your personal relationship with it. Could you tell us a little bit more about why that issue is so important to you and why you choose to advocate for it?
Um, I believe that compassion is the nervous system that keeps society together. And I'm not like talking about it from the perspective of sympathy, just the basic understanding of as you are, so am I. If I feel pain, you feel pain. If I want to be happy, you want to be happy. If I want peace, you want peace. If I have needs and desires, then you have the same. And I think that that general awareness is what makes it possible for us to function in society without feeling like every time we are a shoulder or part of a support system that involves a certain number of people, we're doing something special. It's like society exists, functions, and survives and evolves because every civilization figured out a way to function in community. One of the ways that we do that is by understanding each other and understanding self. I have a lot of patience, for example, for the ones of my friends who are depressive and anxious and who have complications with things as simple as, getting out of bed, making a decision, because I feel all these things. I get the kind of social anxiety where if I'm, I don't know, at a Kava, let me just name something, or a Safeway, I'll get anxious because I don't feel like I lined up my items the right way. I'll get anxious because when I got to the register, I didn't have an immediate decision or answer to the question, what's your order? But I understand why. I know why my brain does this, which means if I'm faced with another person who is doing the same thing, my reaction is not frustration or annoyance, it's immediate compassion because I can see myself in them. And that leads to me, having the belief that it is important for folks to understand what goes with mental health, how it works, how people's, neurodivergence affects the way they act, because that makes it so we can structure society, our interactions, and our expectations in a way that is more conducive to a process where we can actually find a place for everyone. Because for every disorder, you also have very specific talents and attitudes that come with that. If we understand that, then someone that's coming at me with a certain level of anxiety might also be the person that I consult for quality control, for example. So we're having a different conversation now. And that's really at the core of why I think it's so important, because people are isolated functioning with these conditions. They don't understand what they're walking with, and the people around them have a hard time contextualizing them too, because what you might interpret as like laziness or a lack of, I don't know, consideration because they're late or whatever it is, whichever one of their executive functions is failing in the moment, can be explained by what has to do by everything that's connected to their mental health. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes we make with mental health is that we talk about it very conceptually and we have a very abstract, relationship with it. If someone has a leg injury, if someone's knee is bruised, you're not questioning why they still can't run 2 months from now. But for some reason, when someone tells you they have severe anxiety 2 months from now, you still get frustrated at their inability to make the kind of decisions that someone who is completely functional or has the neuroplasticity of a normal brain would make. And so being able to perceive the mental body the way we perceive the physical body involves knowing enough about it for it to be a tangible thing. And that's why I think it's so important for me that people are aware and educated on mental health and what goes into it.
That's really interesting and insightful. I wonder how you see that playing out in the music industry? Or in other words, like what has your time in the music industry taught you about the discrimination and bias that you've been speaking about within the industry?
Well, it's an interesting place because we all walk into this industry from a place of passion, need to express ourselves, need to connect with folks. But very quickly that gets lost in the translation of the music becoming a business, having a product in your hand, being a product yourself, having to become a brand, having to be all these things. And now you have an artist who has at the core of what they're doing, the fuel for what they're creating is the fact that they don't exactly fit in that way in society. They're not exactly able to interact with society in that way, who cannot make it to the next stage of the very thing they're good at because of the very same executive functions, because of the very same cultural background, because of the very same. So it's more about me realizing that the industry ends up being, the music industry and the entertainment industry in general ends up becoming a microcosm for the kind of immediate discrimination that happens in the world. I feel like our understanding of other people, our understanding of the kind of like systemic differences, the kind of inherent complications that come with people, being born where they were born culturally, being born in the body they were born, our inherent understanding of these things is very much in the talk. But in action, it's rarely the case. It's sweet to think, oh, this artist is having the hardest time in the world waking up. This song touched me so much. And then 2 days later, I will be extremely annoyed at this artist, I don't know, not being able to respond to my email immediately. It's sweet to say that, sexism, gender-based inequality, racism, and all these things are happening in real time. You'll watch a movie and think, wow, that's terrible. We really need to treat people better. But then when you look at the numbers in terms of who you're hiring, who you're going to for advice, who you're giving those jobs, who you're making your audio engineer, who you're making your photographer, you realize that, again, it was more talk than practice. And that's what my experience has been when it comes to these things. It's like we're very good at talking about them. We're very good at expressing, sympathy and feeling good about ourselves because we understand these things, or at least in the moment that we were made aware of them, we understand that there's a problem there. But in the execution, that's not what we witness.
Ya Minko, before we go, could you please tell us a little bit about this photo or the significance of it?
Yeah, this was one of my favorite nights, of the last year. At the center of the picture, which I think is the most important, person to me, like heart-wise, in this photo, you have Mitra. She goes by Mitra, and she's one of the most like determined and hardworking, engineers in training that I've met. And we were at the Recording Academy Christmas party in DC at the Eaton. That day, I was the Grammy U ambassador for Omega at the time, and this was me introducing her to Natalia, who's head of project management for the Recording Academy currently. Both like fantastic, people, and super hardworking and super responsive and super on top of their stuff. And every time I look at that picture, I remember, both in that room and even in the program that we were in for audio engineering, how few of the seats are taken by people like them. That would be women, that would be people of color, even more if you're talking about women of color, and they're some of the hardest working people I know. If not, I could name as an audio engineer or as an artist the amount of women and the amount of people who are not the focus, or are doing an extreme amount of the work, but are the most underrepresented group, in the audience. So looking at this photo, first of all, always reminds me of, how grateful I am for the way they show up and the inspiration I get from that, but also the importance of always making space in these rooms, like intentionally, for folks who, are underrepresented, despite the fact that they have so much to offer and deserve so much for that. So, yeah.
Super important. Thank you. So we appreciate all of this. Could you please tell our viewers how they can learn more about you and what's upcoming?
The best way to learn more about me is my website, yaminko.com, yaminko.com. I share all my updates on there, and all my links are centralized on there. And what's next is a lot of a lot of work that's going to come out of the EP. So because at the center of the EP is a conversation that has to do with mental health, inclusion, some level of empowerment, some level of like thinking of ourselves in society, I'm collaborating, with folks who are going to help me spread, that message. So I have interviews come in with like therapists, that I reached out to that have, questions about, who are actually informing and educating me on how I'm using my music to deal with my mental health and the kind of, music therapy that it is and how that can translate in other areas. So a lot of that kind of, content, music videos coming. I'll be at Pie Shop performing on the 26th of December. And I'm also starting something that I'm calling the Backyard Residency, where once a month I'm going to do like a backyard show that's going to be at the intersection of music performance and kind of like just like a talk show moment of exchange with people who are in the audience, where they see the music being performed, but what's really important is the conversation we're having at that moment. So a lot of that.
Yeah, that's all really very interesting. And so I encourage our viewers to click on the links in the description below so that they can find out more about you, follow you, and keep in touch with you. Ya Minko, it has really been a pleasure speaking with you today. It's been so enlightening. Thank you so much for joining us.
For sure, and thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Bye.
To those watching, please follow Team Rayceen on social media and subscribe to the Team Rayceen YouTube channel.
And viewers, thank you for watching.